this video, we are looking at the NFL Draftkings and Fanduel picks for week number 6. This is kind of the midweek look. Final look will be out on Saturday. There are so many viable players this week. It is kind of crazy. There's a lot of great teams that look appealing to stack. There's not obvious stacks. There's no team currently projected to score over 30 points. There's a bunch above 25 right now. So there's a lot to talk about. Let's get right into it. As always, appreciate if you guys would hit the like button on the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Follow me on Twitter. It's at the DFS Process. Can check out Thrive Fantasy if you want and use a promo code to get a deposit match if you're depositing for the first time. The promo code is DFS Process for Thrive Fantasy. I put their info down in the description, and then my website is also down in the description if you wanted to join for this weekend. So the first thing I would say I would do is just to look at the totals for this week. Now the Chiefs game is 5 p.m. I don't see them on the slate, so I do not think that they're on the main slate, even though it comes up on the Fantasy Labs page. But the Vikings have the highest total on the slate at 29. And then you got the Dolphins, surprisingly, but that is because they're facing the Jets team, who just released Le'Veon Bell this week. They are kind of melded in. They are so bad. They have the second highest total, and Fitzpatrick has looked really good, and they're a double-digit favorite, which is pretty insane for the Dolphins. Then the Lions against Jacksonville, they're also going to be viable this week. Then we have the Titans look fine. If you wanted to look at a game stack, I think you could look at the Titans and the Texans as a potential game stack. Currently as a 3-point spread, it should be a close game. And then the Packers and the Bucks, probably my favorite game stack between two really potent offenses. Hopefully the Bucks get Mike Evans, keep him healthy this week. He has been dealing with an ankle injury. He's been playing, but he hasn't been 100%. And then Godwin has missed a couple weeks. Hopefully he comes back this week. And that is mainly the top offenses to target if you wanted to mess around. Like I mentioned, the Texans look really good this week against the Titans. Hopefully they can stay up with them because the Titans just put up 42 a couple days ago. The Falcons look great in another potential game stack between them and the Vikings. And that is mainly the top offense I'm focusing on. I think the Panthers look okay just because their offense is concentrated around just a few guys that you kind of know exactly where to stack them if you wanted to. Just like last week, it worked out really good if you stacked Bridgewater with Robbie Anderson and Mike Davis. So you could go back to them if you want, but the matchup is a lot tougher this week. So my favorite teams to focus on are going to be like the Packers-Bucks game. I like the Miami side a bunch. I like the Houston Titans game a decent amount. I like the Falcons-Vikings game also as a game stack, but especially the Vikings side. And then the Lions look fine. And that's kind of the main offenses that I'll be focusing on. So looking at quarterbacks, just at the top, we have Lamar Jackson, 7,700. Currently, there's not that much value on the slate. We might get more value in a couple hours once we find out the status of Melvin Gordon, who got cited for a DUI a couple days ago. And he is potentially facing just team disciplinary actions. Coach hasn't made a decision if he will be available or not. Personally, I do not think he will be playing this week because he's going to get suspended by the league. And Lindsey should be back this week, so it's not like they are just have no other option. So we'll get confirmation on that. If he is out, then Lindsey is only 4,300. Even in a tough matchup, he is going to be a guy that you're going to want to play in cash at least. But back at the quarterback position, Lamar Jackson at 7,700 against Philly. Baltimore is not at the top of the teams to stack for me just because they are expensive. Lamar Jackson is always going to take a chunk of your salary cap at quarterback. He hasn't had one strong connection with any of his receivers. Marquise Brown has been disappointing. Lamar Jackson has huge upside, but his fantasy lines have been disappointing this season. He has 15, 26, 15, 17, and 27. So not even clearing 16 fantasy points so far in more than half of his starts. You know who has done that in 80% of starts has been Fitzpatrick, who's down at 5,900. But I think I'd rather go to, if I was paying up, Aaron Rodgers looks great, but only $200 difference from Lamar Jackson. I might make an argument to get up to Lamar just with his rushing ability. But Rodgers has been one of the best quarterbacks in the league this season. 13 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's getting Devontae Adams back this week, his number one weapon. He looks tremendous as a pay-up option at quarterback. Deshaun Watson's price tag is starting to get up there, but as you see, there's not that many top-end quarterbacks that look that appealing this week, so he should be at least in consideration with the upside that he presents. He's looked a lot better the last couple weeks. I'm not that interested in Big Ben at 6,700. I would rather go a little bit cheaper. I'm not interested in Matt Ryan. I think Tom Brady looks fine in a high-scoring, close game against Green Bay. I think he will be able to put up some points, especially if he gets Godwin back this week. Cam Newton at 6,500 against Denver. That looks really nice. He has been playing great this season. Out of 3 games, he's dropped over 25 fantasy points. He has huge rushing upside, as he's shown with 4 rushing touchdowns already on the season. Denver defense is dealing with some injuries. They're not at 100%. This season, they've been middle of the pack defensively, but Cam Newton 6,500 is one of the cheapest price tags you'll see for him. And then I think you could take a shot on like Kirk Cousins if you're really feeling it. He's 6,100. They have the highest total on the slate. That's why I'm bringing it up. He's going to get some love in cash. At least he's cheap. And they're missing Dalvin Cook, so maybe they'll have to throw a little bit more. So for that reason alone, he should at least get some interest. But the guy that I like the most probably if I was going cheap at quarterback is going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick or Ryan Tannehill. Both guys have high team totals. Both quarterbacks have been playing lights out, especially Fitzpatrick. He has dropped over 25 fantasy points in 4 straight weeks. Price tag has not come up on him at all. He has shown off some of his rushing upside in those 40-something, high 30-year-old legs. He has one of the best matchups this week against the Jets defense, who have coughed up almost 30 points per game so far this season, coughed up almost 400 yards per game to offenses. So Fitzpatrick looks great. He has great chemistry with his wide receivers, especially Devontae Parker. My bad. And he also has his rookie running back, Myles Gaskin, who has done pretty good as well. So Fitzpatrick, 59, looks great. I like Tannehill a lot at 5,900 as well against Houston. He has been playing great this season as well. He also can run a little bit. And then that is pretty much it. I don't think I'll go super cheap. Go much cheaper than 5,900 Ryan Tannehill. If you want to take a shot on Foles, I guess you could. I'm not really interested in playing anybody else. So I think Fitzpatrick makes your lineup look fine. Play him at quarterback this week in cash if you want, or tournaments. Moving on to running backs, Dalvin Cook is not expected to play this week, so the sites were pretty quick to bump up Alexander Madison's price tag, but I think he still looks pretty good this week. He still got 20 carries even in a week where, even last week, he got 23 touches even though Dalvin Cook played a chunk of the game and him himself got 22 touches, so that is 42 touches going to the running backs for them. Last week against Seattle, I think that Madison looks great this week. You can kind of pencil him in for over 20 touches, maybe 25 touches. He can catch the pass out of the backfield. The matchup is really fine for him against the Falcons defense. They have the highest total on the slate. They look really good. He can run a bit. They've given up 32 points per game. He can catch passes as well, so he looks like a really good running back. You also have Derrick Henry at 7,300 against Houston. He looks great. He might even get more ownership than Madison because he's only $100 more expensive. But I like him. I think Jones looks fine, although the matchup for him is a little bit tougher, as the Bucs have a pretty good front seven. So I'd rather go Madison and Henry than go Jones. And then Mike Davis looks fine. He has just been getting so much touches that it's pretty safe for him to make value every single week, just like Christian McCaffrey would. Not 8 catches in 3 out of 4 games. He has gotten you over 25 touches in last week's game against the Falcons. It's a tougher matchup this week, but he's still done fine in some tough matchups, like 16 against the Bucs, 23 against the Chargers, 22 against the Cardinals defense. So if you wanted to play Mike Davis, there's not like 10 strong running backs this week, so he should at least get some consideration. Not that interested in Kareem Hunt against a tough Pittsburgh defense. Not that interested in Sanders. We have Mixon against the Colts defense, Indianapolis defense. They have been looking great this season. Not that interested in targeting the Bengals offense this week. And I guess you could look at Jonathan Taylor at 6,400 if you wanted to. He's pretty affordable there. He has his touches have come down a lot. He hasn't been that much of a factor in the passing game. Phillip Rivers has just been kind of been mad this season. He just doesn't throw for a lot of yardage, doesn't throw for a lot of touchdowns a week. Relies on that strong defense, relies on some of his tight ends and running game, but I'm not that interested in going with Taylor if he's not getting that many touches. A guy that I do like is Myles Gaskin at 5,400. I think he looks great against this Jets defense. He has been getting the touches. He got 20 plus touches last week. He got 13 the week before, 27 the week before that, and then he got 13 against Buffalo. But he has been getting almost all the carries. He has been a safe floor. He has dropped 14 plus fantasy points in 3 of 5 weeks. Now he gets one of the better matchups that he's had against this Jets defense. I think he will be able to capitalize on that and have a really good week this week. So 54 for Myles Gaskin, I think, looks really nice. And we have a potentially plug-and-play here at 4,300 with Phillip Lindsay. Now Phillip Lindsay will be dependent on the news of Melvin Gordon. Now, if Melvin Gordon is out, obviously Lindsay is a tremendous play. If Gordon is in, you could still play Lindsay if you wanted to, but it's going to be a little bit riskier. But right now, assuming that Gordon doesn't end up playing, I like Lindsay at 4,300. And then moving on to wide receiver. Now, this is the position that has so many good options this week. At the top, you have Devontae Adams at 8,000. The Bucs have a pretty good secondary, so it's not like he has the easiest matchup in the world, but he has been one of the best go-to guys for Rodgers over the past couple years. We saw what he did in week 1. Week 2, he got injured, but really he's going to get a lot of targets, so he looks fine. Ridley looks okay too. Would like if Jones misses again before I pay 78 for Ridley, but it's going to be one of the higher scoring games of the week, so you could play him. Thielen has kind of come back into himself the last 2 weeks with 29 fantasy points. He got overshadowed by Justin Jefferson in week 3, but since then he's gotten 17 catches the last 2 weeks, 23 targets. He's the go-to guy for Kirk Cousins still. He looks really good at 73 against this Falcons secondary. Robinson looks okay. The Panthers have been decent defensively, so it's not the best matchup for him. Mike Evans, same thing. If he's in, I like him. I would like him if Godwin misses. If Godwin is in, I'd rather go to Godwin at 6,400. See on Juju Smith-Schuster. Smith-Schuster did not practice on Wednesdays. Not sure if it's serious or not. If he ends up sitting, we all know who to play, and that's Claypool, who will be getting a lot of ownership if Juju Smith-Schuster ends up sitting a week. Then we have Devontae Parker at 6,300. I think he's just a perfect stack with Fitzpatrick. You're not sacrificing literally anything with your salary cap. You're not even expending that much, from getting a top-end stack this week with one of the highest totals on the slate. Parker only had 2 catches last week as Preston Williams had a big week, but one of them did go for a touchdown. He's still been the go-to guy, really, for Fitzpatrick the entire season. I'm expecting a big week from him against this god-awful Jets defense. You have Beckham, 6,400. He looks fine. We have Kenny Golladay against Jacksonville. He has only been able to play 2 games so far this season. He has gotten 15 targets combined. He looks okay as well. The Jacksonville secondary has been getting beat up by wide receivers, so you could play him. Crowder has been the most consistent wide receiver to date for the Jets or literally any football team. 3 straight 100-yard performances. 3 weeks that he's played, he's dropped over 100 yards receiving. Over 10 targets every single week, whether it's Flacco, whether it's Sam Darnold, he's getting the love. You could run it back if you stack up the Dolphins, run it back with the Jamison Crowder. Justin Jefferson also, you could play him if you didn't want to get up to Adam Thielen. And we're getting into some of the cheaper plays this week. Claypool, everybody might be jumping on the bandwagon this week. That was a 4-touchdown performance. It was spectacular. He looked great. But we've seen this happen a lot where a guy goes off, next week he gets so much love, and then he ends up bageling or ends up not having that good of a week. So we'll see if Juju Smith-Schuster ends up being limited or ends up sitting. Then he looks even better. But I'm going to be a little bit cautious there. Cooks had a breakout game as well. He had 30 fantasy points. 12 targets, 8 catches, a touchdown. Took some stuff away from Will Fuller, which was sad to see, but good for him. And then we have some more cheap options. You could go Preston Williams if you wanted to stack Fitzpatrick with both of his receivers. You could go with Valdez-Scantling if you wanted to, or the Eagles guy who broke out, Travis Fulgham, at 4,400 if they're still missing Jackson and Jeffrey. And then Tim Patrick could be interesting as well, depending on the news of KJ Hamler. If he sits, he ended leaving the game last week early in like the first quarter. After the first series he left, it opened the door for Patrick to have a big week. And then I guess there's not that many other guys that looked that appealing. Whoever thought we would see AJ Green at 3,900? But that's just been the kind of player AJ Green has been this season. He has not gotten anything going. Left the game early last week against the Ravens, but wow, I just cannot believe we're getting AJ Green at $3,900. That's insane. But I guess he should be at least in your player pool, just because he's super cheap. And that's it for me. I don't think there's any other wide receiver that looks that appealing. So Devontae Parker looks great personally against the Jets. And then play Adam Thielen to stack with, if you wanted to play Cousins or at least a solo guy, stack with Madison. I mean, the Vikings should be able to put up some points this week at home in the Dome against this Falcons defense. At tight end, we have Andrews at 6,500 against Philly. I will not be able to get up to him, just he's too expensive. Gesicki looks fine at 5,500. He has been getting some love from Fitzpatrick. He has gotten at least 5 targets in, I think, 3 of 5 weeks. A couple weeks he just had 1 catch for 15 yards. But he is one of their, he plays like a slot receiver role for them, so he's not really a tight end in the way he lines up on offense. But really, I'm looking at Jonnu Smith, Robert Tonyan. 5,100 for Tonyan looks great against the Bucks, coming off that 3 touchdown performance. Even though they're getting Devontae Adams back this week, they're still missing Lazard, who's on IR. So he's going to be the second option for Aaron Rodgers to throw the football to. And then we could look at if Mo Ali Cox sits, we could look at going with Jack Doyle, who is super affordable. See the price tag on Jack Doyle, even though he's been disappointing. He's only 2,700. Or we could look at Trey Burton, who has kind of stepped up and kind of did a lot better than Jack Doyle the last couple weeks, where he's made his debut. 5 catches last week. If Mo Ali Cox ends up missing, we know Philip Rivers loves his tight ends. Could be a decent spot for a cheap Trey Burton. And that is it for me at tight end. There's not that many other guys. I think Ebron is in. He looks great at 4,100. And then moving on to flex, probably go with, going to have to go a little bit cheaper at one of these positions, whether wide receiver, tight end, or flex. I do like the price tags on Galladay and Crowder. And I do think that Gaskin looks great. If you wanted to stack an offense, I think Fitzpatrick, Parker, and Gaskin, that trio looks really good this week. They're all affordable. They're all cheap. They all have tremendous matchups. So I think the Dolphins trio might be, kind of like the Panthers trio that I stacked up last week this week. So that is kind of it for the DraftKings side. Let's jump over to FanDuel. All right, on FanDuel, this week at quarterback, no surprise, Lamar Jackson is at the top of the list. He's 9K. Definitely not going to be able to get to him. I think Rodgers looks good at 8,400. I like Watson a bit. Cam Newton is more expensive on FanDuel. Is going to be a little bit tougher to get to at 8K. Then we can go with Fitzpatrick or Fitzmagic at 7,400. He looks tremendous. Tannehill at 73 looks great as well. Cousins, just because they have the highest total on the slate. And they're missing Dalvin Cook potentially, or probably. And we could look at Nick Foles maybe as only 6,900. That's it at quarterback. FanDuel, you have like 5 guys that look appealing. So probably continue to go with the Dolphins stack this week on FanDuel with Fitzpatrick at quarterback, at running back. Henry is 9,000, so he's super expensive. But FanDuel did not raise the price tag on Madison that much. He is still, they raised it a little bit, but 7,000 for a running back against the Falcons, especially with how often the Vikings use a running back. He's going to be a plug-and-play on FanDuel. Mike Davis looks okay at 7,500. I like the price tag on. We'll see what the price tag is on Lindsey if he ends up having to take over for Gordon. If he ends up not being in, he is 5,100. So keep an eye on this. That is just too cheap for Lindsey. If Gordon sits, I mean, if he's suspended and they hold him out, that is just going to be too cheap to ignore. If you go with these two cheaper running backs on FanDuel, you literally have whatever you want to do at wide receiver. You have so many good guys to pay up for. We have Thielen at 7,400 in a tremendous spot. We have Devontae Parker, who is not even expensive on FanDuel at all, at 6,400. We have also, you could take a shot and pay up for like a Devontae Adams if you wanted to do that. We'll see where we're left with after we look at our tight ends with Andrews, who's 7,600. And Tanyan is 62. I like Tanyan. I like Smith on FanDuel. I like Gesicki a bit after those two. And then you could maybe look at Ebron if he's in at 5,200. So let's see. If we put in Tanyan at 6,200, still have 6,800 left. FanDuel, it's a little bit easier to pay up at defense, so that's what I kind of like to do. Maybe we could look at the Colts are 5,000. Don't know why the Redskins are 4,600. They are not that good of a defense. The Dolphins are way more expensive, so 4,400 for them is going to be a little bit tougher to get to than it is on DraftKings at 2,900. So we'll just see where we're left with after we put in like the Colts defense this week. Still have 7,700 left. We could pay up for a running back, another running back at flex, like a Derrick Henry if you're feeling it. Let's see what other running backs look good this week. Besides Henry at 9,000. Mike Davis, you can have a lot to leave over. So let's see. If you put in Adams, you still have 6,500 left for a decent flex guy. Maybe A.J. Brown. Maybe James Robinson. Don't love where that looks, so we'll see where I end up going with, but maybe go a little bit cheaper than the Colts defense. But I think like this core, if Lindsey ends up getting the start this week, looks great. Like 5,100 for Lindsey's too is really tough to ignore if he's gonna be the bell cow this week. And then I love Parker. I love Thielen, especially Parker is just too cheap. Love Madison, and then Tanyan is probably gonna be the guy that I get to as well at tight end. So that's it for the video. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. You can leave a like before you head out, and good luck this week.